You got your mama's sunshine, you got your daddy's rain. You're like a piece of heaven in a hurricane.
Hey there, welcome to this week's podcast. I am Josh Vietti. I'm here. We have a special guest today. We have Pastor Jim Cruz from Thousand Oaks, California.
What's up, everybody?
How's the weather over there? Is it nicer than it is here?
Sunny.
Okay.
Sunrise today was epic.
Okay, so that's nicer. And we have Pastor Ron Vietti, who is with us today. And we have Vince Sierra. Hey. And we're the crew. We're the crew for today. And we're going to be talking about all kinds of stuff. I don't even know what we're going to talk about today. I'm just going to be honest, but I know where we're going to start. We're going to start with questions and answers.
No, we're not.
We're not.
I got some on my mind I've got to talk about real quick. And I think we'll have a whole podcast on this.
I'm going to fire myself.
But The Biology of Belief is a book that I've referred to quite often, Bruce Lipton. And I ordered it again because I couldn't find my copy. And basically, this book, it says on the back, will forever change how you think about your own thinking. Stunning new scientific discoveries about the biochemical effects of the brain's functioning show that all the cells of your body are affected by your thoughts. And in this book, he will talk about how people are changing their lives as far as being medically healed, different things by the way their thoughts operate. And again, he says in this book, he says that I'm not saying that you can just start thinking positive thoughts and be healed, but he said it's your subconscious mind that affects your genes. We used to always think it was the opposite way around, that your genes affected all this. But he says, no, your thought life, especially your subconscious brain, affects your genes. And he kind of hints to it in the book, and I haven't read it all. I've just kind of pieced through it.
Is this a mainstream book or is it a Christian book?
No, it's a mainstream book. And so as far as I know, I'm trying to think now, I don't think he has, he doesn't come from a Christian perspective at all. And this is scientists that have discovered this. And of course, I started right away thinking about, the fact that, and he does mention in the book, that as we raise our children, we're building up what they believe in their subconscious. We're putting values in them, values that they can't get away from.
Right.
And all I'm saying is, train a child up in the way he ought to go, the Bible says, and he will not depart from that way. Could it be a subconscious mind will be so programmed? And then I thought too, because I went to my telephone and I thought, okay, the subconscious mind even has the ability to heal you. And I started thinking to myself, even when I had leukemia, I heard from God, and by hearing from him, faith is a result. Faith cometh from hearing, hearing from the word of God. And I just knew that I knew after I heard God 3 or 4 times, there is no way I won't live. I can't die of this. And of course, I didn't die. And the leukemia is pretty much out of my body. And I think that the word of God is so powerful, it can reprogram your subconscious. And I asked the internet, I said, how do you reprogram your subconscious mind, your brain? And it says positive affirmations, visualization, hypnosis. And by the way, in the book, they hypnotized a kid and got him healed, a miraculous healing by hypnotizing him and putting thoughts in his mind. And the medical field was just astounded. Meditation, it says meditation. So I started thinking about meditation. And I thought, in Psalms, chapter 1, verse 2, this psalmist begins by describing the man who is blessed. Now, the word blessed, I've given it a working definition through the years. The word blessed means that God's touch on your life is going to be so evident that people will almost even be envious. Blessed is a huge word. And it says here, here's the blessed man, he who doesn't keep company with a bad crowd. Furthermore, the word of God governs his thought life. Both day and night, he thinks about what God has disclosed in his word. Now, here's the key. He thoroughly enjoys spending time in reading and pondering the word and meditating on the word. So the idea, you guys talked to me, meditation is just went out of the church now. I don't hear it talked about much, preached about, like a cow chewing its cud. But
the rumination where it's going through all the different digestive.
Would that change our subconscious mind?
Yeah, absolutely.
And could our subconscious mind in return heal our bodies?
I think it's crazy that this is science telling us a fact that Scripture has told us for thousands of years, that do not be conformed to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your minds. So pattern, again, we're talking science, has now deemed neural pathways as this pattern of thinking that happens in our brains, that when we have a thought, it creates this pathway that if you have a thought over and over and over again, it creates a groove. You call them grooves. So the groove can become so deeply entrenched in us that it will get to that subconscious level. So why couldn't the Holy Spirit jump into that groove and create a new neural pathway?
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing, and it just blows me away and excites me when I see the world. And by the way, this book, we could put a link on at the end or whatever, but it's The Biology of Belief by Bruce H. Lipton, PhD. And so it excites me, though. I see the world proving the Bible. Like you say, Jim, we've had this here in front of us forever, meditation, and we haven't taken full advantage of it.
And mental's so important, too. I was on a bike ride this morning, I was telling you guys, and I had to climb up about 1,000 feet, and then I had to go downhill, and I got to the bottom of the hill, and I'm like, oh, I got to climb back up that. And so as I'm pedaling along a couple more miles, I keep thinking in the back of my mind, I got to make it back up that hill. Like, I have to climb out. And as I start climbing out, I kept saying to myself, like, anybody can do this. Anybody can do this. Anybody can climb out. And it was like repetitive, like on repeat, because I knew that if I didn't just like convince my mind that I was able to do it, there was no way I was climbing out of that hill. I was like, I'm gonna die out here. It started pouring rain. It was a whole thing. So I think being able to, like you said, have repetition, be able to believe that you can do something and overcome. I think like when the Bible talks about faith, I think a lot of that faith comes from that repetition of prayer and like really believing in who God says he is and believing in what he has done.
Romans says faith comes from hearing and hearing from the word of Christ.
Yeah.
And that's rhema. That's not logos. That's a word spoken to you personally and confirmed. And just like leukemia, God spoke to me, confirmed it just 3 times in a real strong way. And a result is I'm healed because I believed it with all my heart. And so that's a pretty crazy discovery, but that's not our podcast today. I think we want to answer a health question because they keep coming in. And then from there, we'll try to finish up on demon spirits. So if you got little kids around, you might want to move to another room or whatever. That's where we want to go. But someone had questioned me after the health podcast about RFs, radio frequency waves, and how bad they are for you. We talked about EMFs on our podcast, but radio frequency waves are really bad too. Really, they're part of EMFs. They're one and the same to a degree. So your RF waves, frequencies and waves, they come from your Wi-Fi, from your wireless internet. They can come from cell phone towers. That's more RFs, radio frequencies than did I say RFI'S? I might have.
I don't think so. Okay. I think you said RF.
Yeah, these RFs.
Yeah.
And so I have a meter that measures RFs and EMFs. And I just had internet put in my house a while back. I have it up at my house in the mountains, and there I unplug it every night. But I had it put in my house down here in the valley. And I took my new meter and I measured the RFs coming through the router in my house, and I was amazed. I was getting like 12, 13 times more of these waves than was said to stay under because of health issues. In other words, I was way over the amount safe with the RFs that were coming out of my router, my wireless internet router. So I unplugged it, and the waves went down almost normal. And it was this RF, not RF, but my wireless router that was putting out these waves. And so I want to talk about that a little bit, and I want to tell our people what they can do to counteract this. You know, it has been known for many years that exposure to very high levels of RF radiation can be harmful due to the ability of the RF energy to heat your biological tissue. And that in turn can really promote cancer and other diseases. So again, and I did read on Newsfeed a couple of weeks ago, my daughter, I was talking to her today and she confirmed it. They said, we can't understand why so many people under 50 are getting cancer now. And there was 2 articles out, 2 different ones. And one was in what did Tara read?
It was in People magazine.
People magazine.
Yeah.
And they said that people under 50 are getting cancer right and left, and we don't know why. Well, I think I know why. For a couple decades now, I've been saying that pretty soon people might start falling over like dominoes due to cancer. And I think it's because it's the first generation that's been raised on wireless internet, bad diets. We're drinking enormous amounts of non-organic coffee, which I said is one of the most pesticide-sprayed crops in the world, probably. And so we picked up these habits over the last 2 decades or 3 that I think are possibly creating havoc on our health. And so now we're seeing people get cancer right and left. Cancer doesn't happen for no reason. There's reasons behind it. And so we're just talking about one avenue today, and that is our exposure to radio frequency waves.
Yeah. One of the things that that I kind of discovered is there's different types of bandwidth too that comes out of these RFs. Like some of you guys, you might have your router that comes from your internet service provider, your ISP, which may be Spectrum, AT&T, and they give you a box. Usually that box is cheaply made because it needs to go into every house, and so they're not thinking about how much of those RF waves are coming out of those boxes. And so there are alternative things that you can buy. For example, you can buy a separate router with low RFs that will allow you not to have those spikes. Because one of the things that you talked about your RF, how much RF was in your house, the way a router works is it sends a spike signal. So usually it's low, 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 and then it spikes. And what they're saying is that spike is incredibly dangerous to your health because it can spike up to 900 on these meters or 1,000 plus. And like you said, that can't be good for your health. So making sure you're checking that. We'll leave a link in the description on one of the meters that Pastor Ron uses so that you guys are aware of these meters. There's more expensive ones. There's cheaper ones. But yeah, definitely you should look into those things.
I'd give you the name of it, but I didn't bring it today. So if we can put a link
we'll put a link in. Yeah.
One of the things I've seen you do to ensure that these radiation waves or whatever they are, that they're not affecting your brain as much, is you always talk on your phone with speakerphone versus holding it to your ear.
Always.
And that's something anyone can do as long as you're not, as long as your conversation is okay to have in public, right?
But what do you do?
People.
Like I just pulled this up with my Wi-Fi and how
you have like 10 networks available.
Yeah.
So what happens?
So we're surrounded by it, even if you don't have it in your house.
Right. No, even if you. So what happens is there's a fall off. So just because your phone's receiving the signal, and so a lot of that energy is coming to your phone. So your phone, if you were to hold an EMF meter, which is different than the RF, you'd realize that your phone's like the receiver to all these RF and all these different transmissions, right? It's like like we talked about an antenna on top of your TV. It's the receiver. So the closer you are to that receiver or the thing that's pushing out the signal, the worse it is. Now, like I said, think about this, like whether you have a 2,000 square foot home or you have a 500 square foot home, they're giving you one box to cover your whole house, and they know they don't want to have to come back and do a service call. So they're going to give you a router, a boosted version of that sends an enormous signal into your house
to cover the whole house.
Now, your neighbor might have signal, and you might see that you might get one bar from them. You're not going to have that 900, that dangerous level of RFs in your house from their router. Now, if it's in your house and you're not aware of it, especially if it's by your bed, some people have their routers by their bed, or they have their routers right in the living room where they spend a lot of family time, or they have their routers in a common family area. So it's like you said, Josh, the things you can do is moving your router does help, because if you have one router in your house and you move away from it, the number does go down. But again, without having a meter, there's no way to actually tell.
My bedrooms are safe.
Yeah.
The living room, the den is not. But again, what you were saying, Vince, is we got to take control of what we put in our house. Up at my mountain house the other day, I don't have cable TV, so I called this cable company to come out. And I didn't know what they were going to do. I wasn't even thinking about it. My mind was somewhere else. and they went and they were putting a what do you call it?
Satellite on the
satellite
roof.
on top of my roof. And so after they did that, or before they did that, they hadn't done that yet. They had it laying in my driveway, and they were putting this satellite dish together. And a guy walked in with like this 2-foot box. And I said, "What's that?" He said, "We call it the tower." I said, "That's the router?" He said, "Yeah, I'm going to put this right here in your living room. And now any TV in this house, and it's a 3-level house, they'll all have TV because of this router right here." And I go, "Get that out of my house." I said, "Basically, buddy, you worked about an hour, and I'm going to pay you." He said, "Well, you can't pay me." I said, "I'm going to pay you." But I said, "I'm not going to have that in my house and distribute all that radio frequency waves and EMFs." And so I feel especially sorry for a lot of people who are listening to this, that they work in a place of business, a doctor's office or wherever, and they're on wireless all day long.
Or even somebody that lives in an apartment complex.
A condo.
Yeah, you're right.
I was in a place a while back, and it's funny, I have everything. And my wife said, being that you are probably EMF sensitive. Now, we might say something about that too. These radio frequency waves and EMFs, they might not affect everybody. I think it's been talked about that some people are just EMF sensitive. I probably was, because I lived under these towers for a long time, right underneath these towers that had to be projecting all kinds of RFs. And I told you, I got curious about what these RFs would do to your health. And as the time before computers and phones and all this. And so I'd collected just a stack of papers about 8 inches high from all over the world that says that if you live under these towers, you'll get cancer, and it'll probably be leukemia. And I told you I was praying one day, and I felt God really spoke to me, and came out of my prayer closet, and I told Debbie, I said, we're moving now. And of course, I got leukemia a year later. And I think it was caused by those towers. So I think I have a right to talk about this. But there's things you can do, a lot of things you can do. So I don't want people listening to think, I don't have any hope because I have to work in this. First of all, you might not be EMF sensitive like some people are. And that's in your favor if you're not. But number 2, there's all kinds of other things you can do to offset this. There's no way you're going to get totally away from it. I have a saying, do your best and leave the rest. And just do your best. But we're going to talk in a minute. I don't want to hog up the time here, but I want to start talking about a lot of things you could do. Vince has already given you one.
Yeah.
And so what did you do? Did you go on the internet to look for this?
Yeah. So one of the ways you can just type in low RF routers, and you can find those. So they're a little bit more expensive. Like anything that's healthier, it seems to be more expensive. But you can get those. Again, I do believe that if you do have a router in your house and you can't afford to get another router, moving it to a place that's furthest away from your bedrooms will definitely help, at least help that spike, because the spike is what you want to get rid of. Because again, for the most part, that's low, and then they spike. And if it's the furthest thing from your house, the spike is going to be relatively less, impactful to your health if it's not right.
Well, what I was going to say, and I forgot what I was going to say, is we were in a place where there had to be a lot of RFs and EMFs. And my wife walks in and says, "Here, babe." And she threw a blanket to me. I bought this a long time ago. It's supposed to repel EMFs and all of that stuff. And even in condos, they have paint out there that you can paint a wall. Like if you live next to somebody that has all of this stuff that is emitting EMFs, and of course EMFs will go through walls. You have paint. You can paint a wall. There's all kinds of things you can do. And I want to, again, talk about that. But Josh said probably the paint you put up that repels the EMFs probably has chemicals in the paint, Well, so how do you win?
I'm just coming at it from a perspective of my daughter who the other day I was taking my kids to school, and I left them in the truck, and I had to go back inside the house and grab something. And while I was inside the house, talk radio was playing, right? And so I got back in the car, and my daughter's just saying, "I'm going to be 12 years old. I'm going to be 12, and Romy's going to be 9. I was like, "What are you talking about?" She's all, "When society collapses, I'm going to be 12. She's 7 now. So apparently she did the math, and the talk show host said that in 5 years, our
she was listening while you were in the house.
And so, it's funny because we've talked about a lot of this stuff before, and we've went back on, what do we need to talk about? What is going to help people? And then when is it just too much? When is it too much to talk about this stuff, right? And all of a sudden you're just worrying about everything. And so I think there's a balance. I think that you do the best you can, but then if you have to have the ability to set that worry down, like you said, like forget the rest, just say, I'm going to do the best I can with diet. I'm going to do the best I can with all these electromagnetic waves. But Jim, the truth of the matter is, even if you didn't have a phone, those Wi-Fi networks are still here. They're still here, and you can't avoid them. Right. And if there's people that work in certain places, you can't avoid them.
We can move to Alaska. All of us move to Alaska.
You can move to dead zones. I mean, that's your best bet, where you won't have communication. And so, really, we've chosen to be communicated, or to be in this constant communication with the world around us,
right,
over our health. That's the truth,
right?
And we have to accept that and move on, or like you said, just do the best you can. I think that's the best way.
There's a healthy approach where you're not going overboard, like you said, where you're not building up all this anxiety, like the RFs are killing me. Like do what you can, because I think we all should do what we can for the most part. We talk about different things like global warming. It's like, you can't change it all. People are like, that doesn't exist, whatever. It's like, yeah, that doesn't exist, but maybe you should start recycling, because that's probably a good thing, Right, so it's like, do what you can, like do what you can. Like you said, I was watching a comedian the other night on Netflix, and he was talking about this buffet called the Golden Corral. And I feel comfortable saying it because he said it. I'm like, it's the contents from him. And so anyways, he's like, yeah, I used to work there. And he's like, man, you guys would go in there and you'd be excited about your food. You'd be getting your coleslaw and your mac and cheese and your chicken. And he's like, you guys are living your best life. He's like, what you didn't know is we were working our butts off back and forth, sweating like crazy to get the food back out to you. And he's all, once in a while, I'd go to serve those green beans and my drips of sweat would fall right in the green beans. And he's all, you know what? You guys ate it right up. He's like, it made it even saltier. And he's just laughing. Everyone's laughing, but cringing at the same time. And he's like, he makes a great point. He's like, you still enjoyed the food, even though you didn't know the sweat's in there. Now that you know the sweat's in there, you're like, oh man, like that food was horrible.
I don't think we want to know half the things in our food.
But my point is like, are you gonna? You're probably more likely to die of the stress if you stress out about the RFs than you are to die of the RFs, probably.
You know what?
But you should do what you can.
Ignorance is bliss, but ignorance can also kill you.
Yes,
so there's a balance.
I just love it. Do your best and forget the rest.
Yeah. Let's all move to a blue zone.
Oh yeah.
Well,
but then you're going to be cut off from people, and then you're going to die of loneliness.
There's the new
that will put you in the blue zone.
Yeah, we're gonna have to buy the rights to that song now.
It was only 3 seconds.
That was my phone going off. I forgot to put it on silence. But a group of villages in Sardinia, Italy, was the first blue zone, and this region is home to male shepherds who typically walk 4 or 5 miles through the mountains daily, eat primarily plant-based diet. Here we go, gang. Mediterranean and moderately consume local wine, and so this place in Italy. I mean, obviously they'll wait. They're not. They don't have 5G cell phone towers. They don't have.
You know what?
They don't have.
They also
internet.
don't have over there. They don't have stress
because they drink that local wine.
Well, and I was in Europe this summer, and those people are not like Americans and how they operate life.
Right.
However, Loma Linda is also a blue zone.
Loma Linda is?
Loma Linda.
No.
In LA?
Look it up. Loma Linda,
interesting.
California, is also a blue zone. So what's interesting in there, though, is they are Seventh-day Adventists, and they do eat mostly veggies.
Okay.
I don't think they eat meat. Is that right?
They're real strict on their diet.
I'm pretty sure
Real
they don't
strict.
eat meat, and they definitely don't eat pork. I know that, but I don't think they eat meat. But I've been watching this show on Netflix, The 100. It's called 100 something. I can't remember the exact. But if you just type in 100 on Netflix, you'll find it. And it's a show about the blue zones, and it goes through this guy goes through each and every culture that the blue zones are, the legit blue zones, and he talks about the factors that he has observed there. And he's a journalist. Very, very cool show. But one of the factors that he talks about is the community aspect and the purpose aspect. And these people all live life together in a community. A lot of them, or some, I shouldn't say a lot, but some of them are religious, or some of them just have a really strong community where they have meals together. And they just tend to live longer. It's really interesting.
I never knew that. It says right here, Loma Linda, California, the only blue zone in America, is the home of a Seventh-day Adventist community of over 9,000 people.
Wow.
Adventists in Loma Linda tend to live up to 10 years or more longer than the average American.
Yeah.
Wow. I'm moving.
Okinawa, Japan.
Found your place to. Yeah.
I'm gonna also convert to Seventh-day Adventist.
Oh no! Don't say that.
He's joking.
But really, let's go back. Okay, one of my concerns is for the women and men out there that go, hey, I have to work in this environment, 8 hours a day or 10. Hey, let's talk about what you're eating. And again, I'm going to continue to be redundant, and I know not everyone can do it, but these 72-hour water fasts, they flush out all your damaged DNA. They just reprogram your whole immune system. And again, I have a friend that should have died within a year of cancer, and he's doing a 72-hour water fast every month, and his cancer numbers are not going up. And I'm telling you, what he's doing is every month he's rejuvenating his immune system and getting new T cells and all this stuff.
Some friends of mine want to do it, and they're going to try to do it together. They want me to do it too. And I'm going to suggest to them that we start smaller and then work up to 72 hours. Because
I went right into the 72 hours.
That's wild, man.
But I love it because I didn't know what to expect. Now that I know what to expect, I really dread it. But I try to do it every other month. But Josh, let me give you a hint if you're going to do it. And those of you out there, if you're older, see your doctor. There can be some bad ramifications if you're not healthy. So please don't do it because I do it. But let me tell you the key of what I do. On Sunday nights, I have a big meal like 5 o'clock. And so that meal lasts me all through the night and through part of the next day. Now, the second day is the worst. I mean, you will dream of sucking on avocados the second day. And then the third day, your hunger starts going away. And then at night when you come back, of course, I take bone broth, eat a half of an avocado and chicken. You have to be very careful about what you eat when you come back. But I've even seen my own health improve.
Yeah, that's good. One of my friends suggested a 40-day fast. He said, this has been done before. We could do it. I said, yeah, that's true. But after 40 days, the devil will show up. So you gotta be careful.
Yeah. And then you die if you don't eat.
Man.
Yeah. So anyway, you can fast. You can just get on a good, clean diet, and that might offset any damage to your DNA through these wireless internet radio frequency.
What's interesting is that we can go quite a long time without food. Our bodies can. Less time without water, but we cannot. Sleep is one of the things that we cannot go without. And so it's interesting how we have these limits, but we also have this room to practice discipline, right? And I think that God created it this way to where he wants us to be disciplined so that we accomplish what we need to accomplish in our lives, so that we can encourage one another, right? We're doing this little race thing, like it's, and I'm in terrible shape. I mean, terrible shape. It's so bad. I can hardly even run a mile right now. But when you commit to something and you say, hey, I'm going to do this goal, and you do it with somebody else, I'm doing it with Vince. And so, there's a community aspect to it. It really does something for you. Going back to the Blue Zones thing, there was a man in Costa Rica who was he was on a horse, and he was wrangling up some cattle, and he was dancing and jumping around. They're like, how old are you? He's like 100 years old. 100 years old, and he was active. But what he said that life is about having a purpose, and it's about doing it with others. And
that's good.
Again, like going back to those simple things, that's you have these groups. We have a group at the church that runs together. We have other groups that have hiked mountains together, or maybe it's something else. It doesn't have to be physical. Maybe it's a group that gets together and reads the Bible or plays bunco or whatever they do. Having this purpose and having a reason to show up. Being a part of a church, I think, is really important. I think that's why it was God's plan originally to have a church, is just showing up for others gives you this sense of purpose. And you talked about at the beginning, you talked about changing your mindset. That's a great way to change your mindset, is saying, I'm here for a reason to live for others.
I just thought of a really good book on this. Tribal Influence.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. If you write me, I'll send you a free copy. Tribal Influence is a book that I wrote, and it talks about the benefits of belonging to a group. In fact, you said something else to me right now when you were talking. Anybody out there that maybe we should start a 72-hour water fast club? I'm already doing it with one other pastor in the church. Maybe there's like 20 of us should do it on the same time so we could encourage one another.
Can you exercise when you're fasting, or no? You're just pretty much in shutdown mode?
I don't, because
They said to stay
whenever I
busy.
lift weights, I want to take protein, and that would break your
it doesn't mess
autophagy.
up like your concentration and working. It enhances all that.
No,
or-
but you're going to work out, and then you can't take
After-
any protein or anything because it'll break the autophagy process.
So,
Right.
so they say, Dr. Peter Attia says that, and actually I saw this on that show Limitless with Hemsworth.
Yeah.
They say that after, I can't remember how many hours, but it's around that 72-hour mark, you start to get an intense focus, like a really intense focus.
Interesting.
and your nose starts running.
And from what I, really? Is that true?
Every time. My nose starts running the third day,
Interesting.
and I
That
can
is-
breathe. I can breathe so good after that.
You think
Oh.
your sinuses are?
I think something's
like
happening
being
in my
removed.
head. Yeah, I
like
do.
inflammation.
I do.
Like the inflammation from food.
I
That's
breathe.
interesting.
I've never been able to breathe through my nose since I started 72-hour fast. I can breathe so well through my nose. It's
Wow.
unbelievable.
So
and I know
they-
I have polyps. So
They equated this intense focus to like the hunter-gatherer stage of life, where they needed to eat.
Yeah.
So it's like you need this focus to go and
hunt,
hunt and
yeah.
kill your prey or whatever, dig up your food, whatever. That you needed this intense focus to do that, and so that's why your body does that after 72 hours. Basically, your body's like,
Well-
you need to eat. We're gonna give you a little extra push here.
again, the term is autophagy. It starts a process called autophagy. And as far as I know, you have to go almost 72 hours to get the full effect of autophagy.
Yeah.
50 hours won't do it. 52 won't do it. To get the full effect, you need to go at least 72 hours. And now it's still 48, 50 hours, still flushes out a lot of damaged DNA and cells. It's still really, really good. But I like to do 72. So again, what else can our friends out there do that if they're in an environment where, they're getting a lot of these RFs and EMFs, they can eat healthy, exercise. Exercise blows me away the more I learn about how it has all kinds of health benefits to it. I mean, I knew it always did, but boy, there's a lot of things that happen good to your body when you exercise regularly. And they can drink green tea. Oh, green tea. It's crazy, the things they're finding out now about the benefits of green tea.
and blueberries.
Blueberries are
Yeah,
excellent.
super good for you.
I turned you on to some years ago, that shake.
Yep, and I have been drinking it every morning for the last 5 years.
I think consistency in your diet is important too. I was thinking about that, and I was thinking about how when we change up our diet or we change supplements or we jump on the latest fad, our body has to, we've talked about this before, Vince, our body has to adjust to that. And think about like how much energy and how much it just shakes things up in your system. I feel like your body gets used to kind of eating the same foods because that's how we're the original hunter gatherers, the original people.
Their diet was
They had to
pretty
eat
limited.
kind of the consistent food
Right.
that they had, right?
What they
and they
hunted,
got used to it. And so I think for us, it's like we're constantly, I think that's another reason why we have cancers is we're constantly using new products. We're constantly using new supplements and all these things and for the temporary gain,
And we are a generation. You bring up a good point that
But I'm not
eat-
a
that
nutritionist,
even
so.
though if you're like I restrict my calories at 1,500 calories or whatever, we eat a lot more. We kind of talked about this maybe in the podcast before, but like pre-industrial revolution, like people didn't eat 4, 5, 6 meals a day. They didn't snack all day. They
Right.
didn't have energy drinks. They didn't have to. When the lights went out, the lights went out. There was
I would
no
even say
electricity.
100 years ago, people were not the size that they are today. I went to
Oh,
a
no,
theater
right.
in downtown LA
Yeah.
last week, and I sat in a chair. And the whole preview of this movie, my leg was going into the back of the chair in front of me, and I was like, "What was the average size of the person 100 years ago?"
Right.
Because I don't think it was 6 feet tall.
Right. No, it's true. Yeah. I mean, I'm sure with like macronutrients and stuff, the way that we eat now, and I'm sure it's changed a lot.
This is crazy, and I might regret this statement, but how many 90-year-old, real heavy-set people do you see? You don't see hardly any.
No, you got to keep your weight.
You got to keep your weight down. You have
best
to.
you can.
But I just looked up something interesting. I didn't even know this existed. Premium EMF protection clothing. And you know what? look at this. This isn't bad looking clothing.
Stylish.
That's actually
It's
interesting.
stylish.
Wow.
It's not like aluminum foil.
No, very stylish.
Aluminum foil. It's just aluminum foil dress.
Here comes Pastor Ron.
Well, hey, if you have to work in a place and you think you're EMF sensitive,
Right.
hey, this clothing, I mean, that's pretty modern looking stuff.
Yeah.
So anyway, I don't know what else we want to say about, but let me say this again, and it's redundant. But let's say I had a platform where I spoke to millions, which I don't. But let's say I had a huge platform, and I went out there and I taught some of this stuff. And we get great reviews, and we get a lot of people following this podcast, but it's not in the millions. And I went out there and I started just putting this message out all over the United States, and it was really being heard by a lot of people. Right away, I'll tell you what would happen. People involved in the cell tower industry, people involved in the electric cars, all these people would plop down several $1 million, and they'd do some testing that's biased, and they would put it on the internet saying, and you'll see this on the internet, sponsored, you know, web pages.
Yeah.
And what they will do is they will flat lie to you. They will lie to you and tell you it's been proven that there's no danger.
Well,
this is a bunch of baloney,
They'll
blah,
label
blah,
you
blah,
as
blah.
a conspiracy theorist.
They don't lie technically, right? What they do is they'll take 10 studies,
Yeah.
or 20 studies, or 100 studies, and the one that is favorable, they'll use that one.
Or Josh, they will pay people to make it unfavorable.
Wow.
Or to make it favorable in their respect, opinion, or whatever.
It'll catch up at some point because it's crazy. And one of the things, you know, love or hate California and all the different laws. I'm shocked that we did pass a law recently where we are going to get rid of red dye and I think blue dye, the two dyes that are like they know that are extremely poisonous. So they're going to so like if you have M&Ms or Skittles, red M&Ms,
so, yeah.
if you have these different color candies, they're no longer or whatever food, they're no longer going to be able to be put in food products in California, which I think is a good step forward. It's like, wow, I'm glad that they did that. I think in the future when we buy our phones, when we buy our routers, we're going to be notified whether it changes our behavior or not. I'm not sure. That it will say like, hey, just so you know,
Like a warning label.
A warning label. Hey,
California, the one good thing California does is they stay on top of the warnings.
Yeah.
They do a good job with that.
Right.
All the fast food restaurants doesn't stop us from eating the fast food, but but the warning's right there. It's like you're gonna eat this, you're gonna have cancer.
Also, to encourage you, if today you're listening and you might feel like you're not healthy, you know, you haven't been to the gym a lot, you have an RF, you know, you have the router right by the you know, your headboard of your bed. You can start at any time, like changing these habits. You can literally move your router. You can start eating healthy. You can do these things. So, and start small, because one of the things I shared with you guys, I don't even think we were alive, is our bodies rebuild themselves every 7 years. Literally, like our body's DNA will shed all of our cells and rebuild itself every 7 years.
Well,
if you start today, 7 years from now, you start a healthy regimen. 7 years from now, today, you will be a healthier version of yourself.
But that's if you start a healthy regimen.
Yeah. If you start. So don't feel discouraged today.
You talk about belief. You talked about belief to begin today, this biology belief book. And people don't believe that things are going to... We really don't naturally believe that 10 years of consistent behavior is going to make a difference, which is funny because obviously it will, but we don't think that. We think... If I don't see results, like right now, I've started working out a couple weeks ago, and I'm like, I'm not seeing results. I'm like, I've been working out for 2 weeks.
I feel you.
2 weeks. It's nothing. It's not anything.
Right. I get it. Yeah.
It's after the holidays. But it's, you know, we want these quick results. That's what we want. And when we don't get these quick results, we get so discouraged so fast.
What did I hear this last week? We overestimate what we can do in a year, and we underestimate what we can accomplish in 5 years.
That's a Tony Robbins quote originally. Yeah.
Yeah. Now it's a Jim Cruz quote.
All right. I like it.
Yeah. Well, how does that go? You know, I heard someone say, and then pretty soon it's what I've always said.
Yeah.
So I was going to say with Vince's point, you can get overwhelmed. Like, man, I'm just like this. I feel like I'm drowning in like unhealthiness.
Yeah.
And my encouragement is just concentrate on changing one thing.
Yep.
Just focus on changing one thing.
Yep. And the worst, that's a good word. the worst thing that we can do is stress.
Yep.
So that's where
The stress would be worse than the RFs and EMFs.
it's worse than smoking. Yeah. I mean, it really is. It's bad. And so
Do the best you can do with what you have.
Yep.
yeah, it's biologically bad. I mean, cortisol is released into your system. That affects your arteries. That affects
mitochondria.
Everything. It's all bad. So
Yeah, stress, just like 1 hour of stress can start killing off mitochondria.
Yeah.
I mean, it has a horrible, horrible effect. And then you don't sleep. So stress is a much bigger thing to worry about probably.
And a good check for stress, a good thing to do is to ask yourself in any moment that you're feeling overwhelmed, ask yourself, what is real right now? What is real?
Mm-hmm.
Like, am I spending a lot of time, a lot of worry, ruminating, like we said, about things that have not happened, right? Or possibly will not happen? Or am I actually using my energy for what's at hand right now?
Mm-hmm.
Isn't it a fact that the majority of things that we worry about probably won't happen?
They're probably not real.
Probably the majority.
They're not real. Yeah. They're not based in reality. And so, people think that, if somebody were to talk about things that were crazy, aliens came down and took my family, we'd be like, that person's not in reality right now, right? But yet we don't say anything to the daydreamer. We don't say anything to the person that's worrying about tomorrow. We don't say anything to the person that's stressed about their finances in a year. You know what I mean? But that's also not real. What's real is, yes, you might have a behavioral issue that is affecting you financially, which is causing stress.
Right.
But the only time that you have to do something about it is right now. So what are you doing right now to fix it? Don't worry about tomorrow. Don't worry about the next day. You have to start somewhere, right? That is what we're saying.
Years ago, I suggested something that I did read somewhere else, but somebody said they had a worry box. If somebody worry about something, every time they worry about something, they'd write it down, stick it in the worry box. And they said Wednesday at 2 o'clock to 4 o'clock was my worry day.
Yeah.
That's my worry day.
Yeah.
And so I write it down so I can be sure and worry about it, but I don't worry until Wednesday 2 to 4. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, for sure.
Let's talk about demons.
All right.
Let's talk about demons.
That's a good transition.
Yeah.
Worry
let's
to
talk
demons.
about spirits. We kind of left off with this topic, a week ago?
Yeah, last week.
Yeah. Well,
Last
2 weeks
week.
ago, we missed a
A week and a
podcast.
half.
We had
We
some
missed a
technical
podcast, yes.
difficulties, and we apologize for
No,
that.
you had Pastor Ron difficulties. That was what it was. But anyway, for missing the podcast. But spirits, I mean, they're all around us.
Spiritual warfare.
They're all around us. Spiritual warfare and spirits. I mean,
I'm convinced it's the least talked about subject in the modern church, but it's the most
okay.
important.
Why is the church afraid to talk about it, Jim? What do you think?
I don't know, because the world talks about it.
Are we afraid?
The world is releasing movies about the paranormal. The world seems to be almost
Joe Rogan talks about demons all the time.
Does he?
Podcast. Yeah.
Does he call them demons?
Yeah, but I don't think he believes in them, but yeah, he does. Well, he says, he talks about aliens. He talks about all these different things. He's like, well, some people think that demons are aliens and, all this different stuff. And so, they definitely talk about this stuff. It's like the curiosity of the unknown. There's a lot of people that are curious about it. I think what happens is we fear having an absolute idea of what we don't know. So like, if I were to, say 100% for sure that an angel spoke to me this morning and is going to speak to you later on today at 3 o'clock, right? The angel told me at 3 o'clock he's going to come and speak
2 minutes
to you
from
today.
now. Yeah.
Okay, so like that, you would say, well, I don't know about that. I don't know about things.
What would people think of me if I said I've had conversations with demons? And I have.
Right.
I have. Through many deliverances.
I think they would say, tell me more, Ron.
Yeah.
I think that's what they would say.
Of the many deliverances I have done in 50 years, I have actually had conversations with them. And again, let me reemphasize, if anybody out there sat with me through a deliverance, there is no way in my mind that they would walk out of that room going, that was a bunch of bunk. They would know that was real what just happened. And the demons have conversed with me through people.
And I've sat with you, by the way, in a couple of those situations. And it is very real.
Very real. Just like the biblical days. Nothing's changed. It's the same thing.
Absolutely.
We still live in the same days that they lived in the Bible days as far as demonic spirits. And they can possess people or live in them. We might say Some people say, well, it's not a possession. It's more they have a demon. Well, whatever. That's just a game of semantics. I have learned through experience that the same lifestyle that the people lived in the book of Acts, the church in the book of Acts lived, we live that exact same lifestyle today. And what's sad is there's a lot of people out there that go to church who are being taught that that lifestyle is not the same today as it was then. In other words, you don't have authority over demons. You don't need it, I guess. I mean, let me ask you a question. All those demons in the Bible, now in the Old Testament, we didn't see them very much. In the New Testament, when they got confronted, all hell broke loose. Jesus came and started confronting them. And when he did, oh my goodness. And the New Testament church continued to confront them and all hell broke loose. What happened to all those demons in the Bible? I mean, after the Bible was written, they just went away. They just disappeared. They're not around anymore.
Yeah.
I mean, where'd they go?
Right.
And if they messed with people in those days, you don't think they're going to mess with people in these days?
I was reading an article from history.com. I don't know the specific backlink to it. And they were talking about churches and basically the demonic influence and how back, we were just talking about 100 years ago, it was very common. Like if somebody had a sickness or mental illness, they would definitely bring them into the church and then they would pray for them. And then one of the things they would pray as against demons and principalities and all these different things. It was very common. It was a common practice. It was something that they felt was needed. Now, again, this is post having medicine on the shelves. This is post being able to go to a psychiatrist. This was post like all of this stuff. And so all of this was happening because this was the normal response. They read the Bible, they believed it to be true, and they thought, well, if somebody's sick, if somebody has mental illness or these different things.
This was pre all of that.
Oh yeah,
right?
pre, sorry, not post. If they had these things, then definitely prayer and praying over demonic spirits was the answer. You fast forward 100 years, and I'm not saying all mental illness and stuff, but you fast forward 100 years from then, or maybe 150 years from now, we have so much convenience now that we're like, oh, if I need a fix for my health, I'll just go to the store and buy the medicine. Or if I need a fix for right. And I'm not saying obviously I'm not saying everything is caused by demonic spirits, but what I am saying is that we've let our lack of spiritual sense override our convenience.
Well,
it's so convenient.
We're at a point
to get
in
the
human
fix.
history right now where the pharmacological has intersected with the spiritual, I believe.
Interesting.
Well, it's
And expand on
interesting.
that. Yeah.
Well, it's interesting.
I
too.
haven't said that before.
Okay,
but
yeah.
I really do. I think
Galatians 5, you pointed this out in a Bible study decades ago, that the word for sorcery in the Greek is pharmakia. And I thought that was so fascinating.
Interesting.
And some of the drug trips that I've been on, I felt it was like super demonic. So there's a crossover effect. And I'm not saying all drugs are opening us up.
A lot of people are saying, they talk about mushrooms right now. And this is huge in California right now.
Really
it's huge
big.
probably all over. But
it's very huge in our neck of the woods.
Yeah. So they're saying, it's a spiritual experience.
Well, and that it will not only now, people will say, and we didn't have this data, but that mushrooms now can fix mental health.
But here's what's interesting.
The psychedelics.
I think that mushrooms are a cheat to actual spiritual connection with God. I think it's a cheat and it's dangerous. But I think that if you were to meditate on the word, get into a spirit of worship, meditation, go on a retreat, and really spend time meditating, really thinking about God's word, I think you'd have a spiritual experience just like that. And I think it would also have a very positive effect.
Well, can I
on
go
your mental
back?
health.
Can I go back and talk about the point that you were saying how, maybe medicine and just access that we have to things have just kind of minimized the demonic. Well, we went to Africa this last summer, and we had a huge crusade. We had over 1,000 people a night, and we gave an opportunity at the end for the sick to be prayed over and for those people that were being tormented to be prayed over. And I watched at least 100 people get delivered of demonic spirits.
Right.
I mean, I was on the stage, and I saw multiple people on the ground slithering like a snake. In the midst of this crusade, being delivered of demonic
The average
spirits.
person out there has never experienced this. Now, I was in Africa. No, it was South America or Central America. And the same thing, Jim. I started praying for people that were in a line for healing. And I had probably 3 people down on the floor that needed deliverance that were basically, having the effects of the demon possession. They were on the floor and they were rolling around and screaming. I didn't have enough people to help me. And so you see it when you go over into the mission field more than you even do here. Mm-hmm. But what about the things that are more on the practical level, about the lady in the Bible who has been over 18 years? She was crippled, and it says in the Bible that particular crippled state she was in was caused by a demon.
Well, one of the ladies that was delivered of a demon was also blind, and after there was a deliverance, she could see. She got her sight back.
Well, Jim,
we had somebody that was blind, get their sight back.
It says in the Bible that demons can cause all these things, muteness, on and on and on. And so I'm saying to you today, and as Josh is studying all this stuff to get his degree, and he's into mental health a lot, I think that there are some situations that are caused by demons. I do believe with all of my heart that if I could get into some of these mental institutions today, that there's a certain percentage, probably small, of people that I could bring out of the mental institution that would be in the right mind because demons are causing their problems. But we know that multiple personality disorders, MPDs, that are talked about in colleges and everything, I think some of those are demons. We have to understand that some people take this too far. A lot of mental illness, of course, probably the majority of it is just broken things in their brain, broken things in their body, and comes from psychological and emotional issues. Trauma. I'm saying there's a certain percentage. If you have, some kind of illness, mental illness or whatever, you might want to go to a medical doctor, a psychiatrist, and a pastor. And each one can help you on a different level. Sometimes your problem could be caused from demons. If it is, come to us. We will pray over it and use our spiritual authority, and you might be healed. If that's not it, then you might need to go to a psychiatrist and get some help, or you might need to go to a medical doctor and get on some medicines. We have to keep this subject balanced.
I like the approach of, and this is something you taught us with your cancer story, I like the approach of praying first and asking God where to go next, and saying, God, lead me, guide me. And I believe he will. It's worked for me. It's worked for you, where God will put, a certain doctor on your heart, or he'll put a certain type of medicine, or, call this place, or do, read this book, or go to this person, whatever it might be. I think following that path is really important because there's a path to healing that God will lead you along. I do believe that. And he might just miraculously cure you. It's possible. But a lot of times I think he wants you to put work into it,
Right. But there are some people, sorry, Jim, there are some people I think that are beyond, like, they don't know how to ask for help, or they're beyond like being able to get that help. So, and I'm not saying obviously, and I'm with what your dad said, not everything I think is demonically influenced, or, people have issues. But I do think it's up for us to be aware and not just throw like, if somebody that you see somebody struggling, you feel like you said, like, God told you to go and pray for this person specifically, we have to honor that and go pray for them. But at the same time, it doesn't mean that it is or isn't demonically or spiritually influenced.
I'm curious, Ron, in the last 50 years of the church, is the church at large quiet about spiritual warfare because there's like an overcorrection of something in the past?
You hit the nail on the head. I think I was raised, well, I don't think, but I look back as I was raised in the Pentecostal church, and we did and said so many things that were just out there, crazy. We didn't have any biblical guidance or biblical proofs or context for what we were doing. And I think the Pentecostal church, in trying to promote their spirituality, did all these goofy things. And the church has come along now and acknowledged that, some of the things they did were just purely birthed out of emotionalism. It had no biblical, scriptural, spiritual connection at all. And so I think we did overcorrected. We overcorrected. Now we don't believe in any of that stuff because of the fake stuff. And so today, I think in order for us to live in this culture and be quote unquote cool Christians, we don't talk about this stuff. And we're afraid also that if we do talk about it, that we're going to run people off and scare them. I mean, how many churches today are of the mindset that if somebody walked in like this lady in the Bible who was bent over and crippled for 18 years, she would come in and ask for prayer, that it wouldn't even cross our mind that it could be remotely possible that could be caused by a demon.
Right.
I think VBF and our other churches, Valley Vegas, and your church, Thousand Oaks Atmosphere, and on and on and on, I think we're pretty balanced. We don't see demons behind every curtain, but yet we do acknowledge their existence. And we don't do deliverances to entertain people. And we don't do deliverances all the time. I might do one every 3 or 4 or 5 months. And when we do these things, we don't do them for show and tell. We take people behind the stage somewhere where it's in privacy. And so, Jim, I think a lot of stuff in the church today, we went to a lot of unhealthy beliefs and a lot of unhealthy practices because we overcorrect. Mm-hmm. We overcorrect things that should not have been done in the past and shouldn't have been done in a certain way.
Well, all I know is in the 30 years that you've discipled me, like, this is all I know. And so I'm always shocked when I have people attend our church from other different churches or denominations, and they're shocked at this life that we're living. And I'm like, we're just living the Bible. So I don't understand where you came from and why they didn't preach this to you. But I don't see how you're going to fully be involved in your relationship with Christ without recognizing the demonic and the spiritual warfare that is involved in living for Christ.
Jim, I said, I think a week ago on the podcast, 2 weeks ago, that the Bible says all those who truly want to live godly in Christ Jesus, or all those who do live godly in Christ Jesus, they're going to suffer persecution. And so I think our message is so countercultural that if we really espouse this message, really live by it, we're going to get persecution. Do you remember, Jim, the first time that I led you through a deliverance?
Oh, yes. I feel like it happened yesterday. Real.
Where were we at?
Well, it was my buddy John and I. We were at a restaurant and trying to keep this lady that was manifesting at the restaurant. There was a family sitting in the booth next to us, and this lady is like going full exorcist on us.
Oh, wow.
Like, I thought her head was going to spin around.
Oh, wow.
Like deep voice and
you're
growling.
at a restaurant.
We're at a restaurant, bro. Downtown Bakersfield.
And they called me because I had the most experience in this area. And if I remember correctly, you were talking to this girl, and she was pretty crazy. In fact, she had been sent by some big witch, what would you call it?
Like a Wiccan
thing. She had been sent
Satanists.
to curse our church from another city.
Yep.
And what happened when I got really close to the restaurant?
You were driving by. I knew what car you were in. She didn't know what car you were in. And we were in the middle of this conversation, and she just stopped in the middle of like doing her thing and just followed your car through the window of the restaurant and just followed it. I go, oh my goodness. She didn't even see us like looking. I just saw it in the corner of my eye.
And did you remember, you people out there that don't believe in this stuff, just allow us to be foolish for a second. But we took her to a park, and I was praying over her, and she was foaming at the mouth.
Spitting all over you, which you're a germaphobe. And I was
so I prayed, as I normally do, and I said, God, I think I need some angels helping me here right now. She started screaming and said, you would be afraid of me if it wasn't for all of them. And I said, all of who? All of those angels around you. And then remember what was crazy, Jim? She looked at me and says, the demons did. They were talking through her. I said, I've conversed with them before. And they said, can we go into those babies over there? Do you remember that?
Yep.
Oh, wow.
And I didn't see any babies. And within, 30 seconds?
Way far away.
30 seconds, we looked over, and there was babies and strollers over there, and they were coming our direction. And then the Spirit said, can I go into those dogs? And I looked around, and within 30 seconds or a minute, close to 10 seconds, some dogs ran through right where we were at. And this Spirit was picking that up. And I know right now we're freaking people out, and I have many of these stories. I'm just saying to you, we're not crazy. We're not mental cases. I don't know where Vince and Josh is at in this, so don't blame them.
I'm just
for this
like, did you guys send them into the babies or dogs? I mean,
well, in the Bible, they send them into pigs,
the
remember?
pigs, yeah, I know.
And so all I'm saying is this, because some of you have already, you're tuning us out. You're going, I'm out of here. These guys are plumb nuts. Read the Bible.
Yeah.
Read the Gospels.
Yep.
Read Acts, Book of Acts.
Yep.
And what they lived, we're still living that same lifestyle.
I think I love what you just said, because that's what I was resonating with. How could you go through the Gospels and then not have some thought about demons? Because it's very you go through Matthew, Mark, Luke, John. Like, you just read the Gospels, and Jesus is constantly dealing with spiritual presence in people. It's very, and how could you, as you said, other pastors, other churches, how could you read through that stuff and be like, well, no, it just doesn't happen, or it doesn't exist anymore?
This verse, it just is one of several, but in 2 Corinthians 10:4, for the weapons of our warfare are not carnal, but they're mighty through God to the pulling down of strongholds. For the weapons of our warfare are not of the flesh, but they have divine power to destroy strongholds. And when you read verses like that, where does your mind go? And the Bible says also there's a form of godliness. There's a group of people. There are certain people out there that it says they hold to a form of godliness, but they deny the dynamite power, and said, turn away from such people. Don't hang around them. There is dynamite power in this walk with God. We have this divine dynamite power, and it's there for a reason. And it says here in this particular verse that this divine power is used to pull down strongholds, and we're even to take every thought captive to the obedience of Christ. So I know this sounds really radical to some people out there, and they're going, I don't believe this. I don't know what to think about it. You know, I had a guy one time. He's one of my best friends today. I was starting a church in Colorado, and he said, you know, my wife drugged me to see you, drugged me down there and said, we're going to see this guy. And he said, I wasn't even really into church. And so I went along to appease her, and I said, you came out that night and you talked about this radical stuff. And she said, he said, excuse me, we had somebody come in the studio, and I just kind of lost track of mine here. But he said, I went and I sat through the service, and although I didn't agree with a whole bunch of stuff you said, you got my curiosity up to such a level that I went home and I was in the Bible till midnight, because you got me really curious about some things. And so I'm sorry, I just lost my attention for a second. Somebody came through, and I didn't know. Yeah, hi, how you doing? God bless you, buddy.
Can I add this to that scripture that you gave too? Because that's really good, what you were saying about your friend, you know, Ephesians. How can you just dismiss or pass over, put on the full armor of God so that you may stand firm against the schemes of the devil?
Right. I got a word picture. It just came to me. So when we go to Israel, do you guys remember going to Israel? And there was these gates, and there was on these certain gates, there was the landmine, like there was landmines in the fields. You guys remember this? Like you would go through these different areas, and they would like say
the warnings.
The warnings. They'd say don't cross this area because there's landmines in the field, right? And so of course, you know, we'd always joke like, "Oh, run over there and get that thing," or you know, I think our friend Bo once was throwing rocks in the landmine field. I don't know, for whatever reason. Bo, if you're listening, that's you. But can you imagine if they took the signs down and said, it's probably not. They're probably going to be okay. Like most people, like it's going to be an anomaly if they step on a landmine. By not talking about the spiritual stuff in our church, we are letting our people run into these landmine fields.
So
let me
that's a good
just put
analogy.
another illustration on top of that. What if you went down to visit some people in the slums of East Los Angeles, and they told their family members, you know, let's don't mention the G word down here. Gangsters, don't mention it.
Yeah.
We know they're all over the place, but don't mention it. I mean, they're putting our lives in danger if we're staying down there 3 or 4 days. We need to know about the gang stuff out there in the streets.
Another great analogy.
So, but
I believe in this stuff. It's just that I haven't seen it on the level that you've seen it on, and I also know that mental illness does exist, and that there's a biological factor.
Of course,
there.
yeah.
So when I think of spiritual warfare, I think of what demons are doing, and this includes the devil. Like, I think that there's schemes that happen on a much more subversive level. Things that we would never consider being spiritual.
For sure.
Undertones in our media, some of the books we read, some of the media that we consume on a regular basis, conversations, music, different things. I think that there's a lot of forces going on that are designed to keep us distracted from our purpose and from what we're supposed to be doing. And so when I think of spiritual warfare, I first ask myself, what am I supposed to be doing? Right? What's my calling? What am I on this earth to do? And what is trying to keep me from doing that? And I think that I believe that the devil and demons are behind some of that stuff, and so you have to be careful there, but you can pray through that too and just ask God for wisdom as well.
You balance this out.
Why?
You balance this out. I think we need you. I'm talking about the more radical right now, but then bringing in the practical stuff too. It's not all real radical.
For me, look, if a demon started talking to me through, say, Caben over there, right, which is most likely in this room,
most likely Caben would be the one.
It would make me believe. It would make me fight more. It would fire me up. It would put me on guard more. And so I think that the demons are somewhat smart enough to keep me from doing that.
For sure.
And they would rather me be lazy and not see it as
be
much,
so obvious,
right?
Right.
And so I think that through. I'm like, okay, well, obviously for me, it's better for them not to go head up because I will just jump into the mix and start fighting. Like that's what I'll do.
Right.
But if it's much more subversive, I'll get lazy, and so I have to be careful not to get too lazy. So that it's just different for different people.
For sure.
Yeah, and I think there is a practical side. And again, I've said this over several times, I think, in past podcasts, but you could come into VBF and go to church there for 3 or 4 months and never even really know our belief in the demonic realm because we don't talk about it a lot.
Doesn't come up every sermon.
Doesn't come up every sermon.
No.
And so you could
we don't
go
have
there
puke
3 months.
buckets on the stage saying,
we're not
There's a
out
deluge.
of balance at all. But think of this verse. It says, "Be alert and of sober mind. Your enemy, the devil, prowls around like a roaring lion, looking for someone to devour. Resist him, standing firm in your faith, because you know that the family of believers throughout the world is undergoing the same kind of sufferings." So there's some kind of sufferings going on connected to this.
When I read that, I think of a lion in a zoo because those are the only lions I've seen, and I think about how those lions aren't a threat to me because there's a fence, and I think that sometimes in our lives we jump the fence, right? And we think I'm safe, I'm fine, but I would never jump the fence and jump in there with a lion, right? I wouldn't do that because that would be foolish. Sometimes we are very unassuming. We're not worried about what we do in our lives, where we go, where we go mentally, where we go, in our minds, and where we go with outside influences. Sometimes we're jumping right in the cage,
so good.
And there's no reason to do that.
Right.
just don't do it. By the way, KB, I was kidding.
Well,
you know that. He was over
I don't
there. He's
think
over there
so.
looking sad.
KB,
No, he's
crying.
in the
He's
corner.
actually crying.
He's
Yeah,
crying.
that's
I don't
messed
know.
up, man.
It's
You made him
really
cry.
terrible.
I
But-
think going back to the demonic, we've talked about the possession, but the subversive stuff that you're talking about, we're talking about, this division.
Mhm.
There could be a subversive demonic,
Yeah.
entity behind the division or
Have you ever
or the
felt-
distraction.
Yeah. Have you ever felt like you were like somebody was at odds with you and they weren't?
Oh,
Right?
Yeah.
All the time. So like I think
So
I think
much.
the devil's behind that stuff.
Of
Like you
course.
said, division.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
That
Yeah.
would be huge. And I
Yeah.
remember going through a dark time in my life.
yeah,
I thought
what-
everybody was after me.
You
what
did.
about discouragement? Have you
Discouragement,
ever?
Yeah.
Depression.
Depression, yep.
And I
Anxiety.
know that depression can be a clinical thing, but there's something maybe between normal and depression of this discouragement that is spiritual in
There's
nature.
a 100% spiritual root.
Okay,
to it,
we
I
we
believe.
have seen several people in 50 years healed from suicidal tendencies through spiritual warfare.
Yes.
And again, I think once you learn that you have this anointing from God, I was thinking about the Bible the other day. It says The 72 that he sent out, Jesus sent them out into the field to minister and to cast out demons and to pray for people. The 72 returned with joy and said, Lord, even the demons submit to us in your name. And Jesus, he kind of calmed them down and said, I know. I saw Satan fall like lightning from heaven. I saw it. He said, but don't get carried away with this. He said, just know your name's in the book of life.
Be more excited about that.
Let
more
me combine,
focused.
And I have to leave soon because my daughter's in dance today, and I have her clothes, so it's very important. But let me just take the spiritual and the biological, and combine those two right now, because there's a very practical side to taking to someone who's suicidal, right? If you were to go to a therapist, they would work really hard on getting you to understand your purpose. They would work really hard on getting you to understand your worth. They would work really hard on getting you to understand that you have a reason to be here, right? On the faith side, that's all that we teach, is that you have a purpose. You have a reason to be here. Like that you have a God who loves you and gives you the worth. It's just where the worth comes from is a little different sometimes, but it's the same thing. So there's a very practical side to faith. I really believe that.
Well, yeah, and Paul said our battle is not against flesh and blood, but it's against these spirits. And those spirits can come in any form, like you said, discouragement, lust, fear, all kinds of things. So there's much more a practical side to this than the real melodramatic that we're talking about here today.
Right.
So I don't know if there's anything else you want to say about that. I know you have to go, and we are kind of
you guys
lengthy
can,
today.
It's a longer one, yeah.
You guys can wrap it up if you need to, but I have to go and get the little tutu to my little daughter.
It wouldn't be the same podcast if you didn't sign us off, Josh.
I know. So we'll end now, I guess. Is that okay?
Yeah,
That'd be
let's
great.
do it. Let's do it.
Okay, well, thank you, Jim, for coming. We appreciate it, man. Love having you. You
Love
bring
being
good
here.
perspective.
And you'll have to come visit us once a month.
Yeah, I'd love to.
That'd be great. And KB, just pray more. And
And stop crying. Stop crying. It's okay. He didn't mean to hurt you.
It's terrible. Poor fella. Okay. Anyway, love you guys. And thank you guys for listening. And have a great weekend. Don't stress. Don't worry. Just get, really, truly pray about everything and let the rest be.
And thank you for all the comments. People are seeing us everywhere going, man, we love the podcast, So just share it with your friends.
And leave a
and we love to
review.
hear from you. So we love you guys.
See you guys. Bye.
See ya.
In a hurricane, and it's bubbling over like sweet champagne. You got your mama's sunshine, you got your daddy's rain. You got your mama's sunshine, you got your daddy's rain.